Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the South African Chamber of Commerce Singapore's webinar, the AI Playbook, Getting Started. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Kieran Heatley. I'm the Executive Director for the South African Chamber of Commerce Singapore. We are a non-profit organization aiming to foster bilateral trade between Singapore and South Africa. Just to give some housekeeping rules before we kick off. So if you could please keep yourselves on mute and your cameras off. If you have any questions, please leave it until the end. Most likely your questions will be answered during the discussion. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. And I'm now going to hand over to Israel Caballo to kick off the event and hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kerry, and welcome everyone to today's discussion, the AI Playbook, Getting Started. I'm Israel Caballo, and I'll be your moderator for this session. So today we're unpacking how businesses can move beyond the hype and start applying AI practically. Over the next 40 to 60 minutes or so, we'll explore how artificial intelligence is transforming finance, business operations, and beyond. And most importantly, how businesses like yours can start applying these tools in a practical way. But before we dive in, let's make this a little bit interactive with a quick game or a quick icebreaker rather, called the acronym speed challenge. So here's how it works. I am going to announce an AI acronym, and I want you to have your fingers on the trigger within the chat. When I say the acronym, the first person to type out what it stands for wins that specific round. So we've got about 9 rounds. So starting easy and then getting a little trickier as we go. The reason we doing this is because in conversations like these, we often throw around these acronyms, right? Assuming everyone knows what they mean. But sometimes, even myself, I find myself thinking, what in the world does that stand for? And since this is a conversation about AI tools, there'll be quite a lot of acronyms thrown around. So I'm just going to give everyone 10 seconds, and then you'll have your fingers on that. If you're on your cell phones, on your keypad, or if you're on your laptops, right on the keypad, and then we will get started. All right. We're going to start off with the first acronym that I am going to throw off. And I'm sure you've heard this acronym before. LLM. What does LLM stand for? There we go. Yes, large language model. Correct. And I think, Roberto, you get a point in that specific round. So 1 point to you, Roberto. So yeah, large language models, that's what powers tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and other big large language models that we hear about here and there. The next acronym is ML. What does ML stand for? Correct, machine learning. All right, so that's 1 point to you, Tremaine, 1 point to you, Roberto. ML stands for machine learning, and that is the core of AI that lets systems actually learn from data. The next one we're going for is GPT. What does GPT stand for? It's a bit trickier now. Can anyone guess what GPT stands for? We hear Chat GPT. Correct, Kamel. 1 point to you. Yes, Google said so. Yeah, GPT is generative pre-trained transformer, and this is the architecture around these large language models or the architecture around OpenAI's models, GPT. The next one we moving on to right now is RPA. Can anyone guess what RPA actually stands for? Getting a little bit trickier. RPA. As a clue, think of automation, think of robotics. Can anyone guess what RPA stands for? Correct, 2 points to you, Roberto. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, and this is the software that automates repetitive tasks. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. API. Can anyone guess what API stands for? As a clue, think of integration. Think about integrating one software to another software. Can anyone guess what API stands for? All right, I'll give it out. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and that's how systems actually connect and share data and integrate to one another through a layer called API, an Application Programming Interface. Next is CNN, and it's not cable news network. But what does CNN stand for within the AI space? Can anyone guess what CNN stands for? All right, this one's a bit tricky. So CNN stands for convolutional neural network, and this is sort of like a type of neural network. It's good at recognizing patterns, images, and videos. Something Nano Banana would use. It would use a CNN. All right. Then we have the last three. DL. Can anyone guess what DL stands for? This is quite close to what ML stands for, but does anyone know what DL actually means? Correct, Roberto. DL stands for deep learning, and this is just a subset of machine learning that also uses neural networks with many layers around it to analyze certain complex data. So that's 3 points to you, Roberto. The last two. NLP. Can anyone guess what NLP stands for? All right, this is what LLMs would use. Oh, nearly close, Tremaine, but it stands for natural language processing, which is a field of AI focused on enabling machines to understand and interpret human languages. And our last one, GAN. Can anyone guess what GAN stands for? All All right, GAN, this one's a bit tricky. It stands for Generative Adversarial Networks, which is a deep learning model with two parts. One they call a generator, and one which they call a discriminator. And there's a whole bunch of technical information around that, but that's what GAN actually stands for. And congratulations to Roberto. I think you've won the AI acronym speed challenge with I think 3 points. If I'm wrong, I think Kerry, you'll help me tally up the points over there. Um, so awesome job to everyone. And now that we've warmed up and gotten our AI brains on, let's dive into the main discussion. We've got three incredible speakers today, each bringing a unique perspective on how AI is reshaping their industries. And I'll start with a few questions for each, and then we'll bring everyone together for a panel discussion. And I think I'll start off with you, Nesh, just around SMEs. And the question I have is, where do you see the biggest opportunities for SMEs to adopt and use AI tools?
Hi, Israel. Thanks, guys. And welcome everybody. Yeah, I'm Nish. But yeah, thanks. Great question, Israel. Yeah, I think when we talk about AI adoption, a lot of SMEs immediately think, you know what, that's just for big corporates. You know, they picture massive budgets, data scientists, complex systems. I think, but the truth is today, AI is incredibly accessible. You don't need millions of rands or a tech department to start. You just need to be smart about where you apply it. The biggest wins for SMEs come from small, focused automations like, you know, things that save time, reduce errors, and improve customer experience. So I think the biggest adoption for SMEs, I think, would be looking at high volume processing items. I mean, you know, so let's look at workflow automation, for example. AI is now built into tools you might already be using, like Microsoft Power Automation. You know, you can have AI agents that read invoices from your inbox, extract key data, post directly into your accounting system, and it notifies you when something looks off. You know, there's no coding, there's no complexity, there's no complex setup that's required. I think for small businesses that process a few hundred transactions a month, you know, that's hours saved every single week. You'll notice, Israel, that I'm focusing purely on operational finance. That's my forte. It's what we do. We help small SMEs, you know, gain attraction from adoption of artificial intelligence. I think that was the first acronym we should have started off with. You know, and you know, AI is not about replacing people. It's about giving your team the capacity to focus on clients, growth, and innovation. You know, secondly, I think it's about predictive insights. Most businesses are successful because they're able to predict what's going to happen. It's about forecasting. You know, it's about what's our expected cash flow in 30 days, which customers are consistently paying late. You know, you don't need to spend hours or, you know, analyzing spreadsheets. AI does pattern recognition for you now. You know, it helps small businesses make quicker, more informed decisions. And then finally, I think, you know, we talk about customer engagement. A lot of our businesses, SMEs that we engage with now are essentially just traders, you know, buy and sell goods. Their priority is, where do I find my customer base? You know, what can I leverage on? SMEs can use AI chatbots to respond to clients' queries instantly, even outside business hours. AI CRMs, like I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, HubSpot, can follow up leads automatically. Generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Canva AI can help create professional proposals. You know, essentially, it helps small businesses look like huge, big operations. So I think, how do you get started? Start small, you know, one process at a time. Use ready-made tools before building custom solutions. measure your impact, your time saved, error reductions, fast turnarounds. Most importantly, train your people to use AI confidently, because adoption isn't just about technology, it's about mindset. So for small SMEs, it's not about whether AI is relevant. I think it's where it can help first. So I think look at your quick wins, your low-hanging fruits. AI is no longer about the future. It's about practical toolkits for businesses that want to work intelligently today. That's my 2 cents on the matter. And I think a lot of the perception right now around AI is it's going to take over the world. I'm going to lose my job, etc., etc. I think we'll touch on that in more detail later. But I think it's about a collaboration. And what I find is successful businesses are the ones that are able to find that synergy between automation, technology, and people. Because currently in our environment, we cannot have one without the other. I think it's about adopting the synergy between people and process and technology.
Oh, no, thanks. That's quite insightful. You spoke about, having a look at that toolkit and capturing the low-hanging fruits. So in-house within your own organization, what would you say some of these tools are that you use, and how has that uh, uh, X'd your efficiency as well as your productivity just as a business?
Well, essentially, it's about finding that shift. I mean, if you look maybe 8 to 10 years ago, automation was about OCR. It was optical character recognition. It was about digitization. So we finding that there's that the definite shift from traditional digitization, what we refer to as automation back then, into the AI space at the moment. The tools out there, Israel, it's endless. So if I look at what I've used back 5, 8 years ago, we used tools like OCR, Kofax, for example. We found clients that were having, there were challenges in managing high volume documentation. We were basically just throwing people to the problem. And you find yourself with a team of 15, 20, 30 finance staff managing high volume processing. But back then, our idea of digitization was essentially reading a document, extracting information, and allowing systems to read that information. There wasn't, thought back then. And, you could pull out a number off the system, but the system didn't really know what that number meant. So if you looked at an invoice, for example, you'd pull out a whole lot of data from this invoice, but you'd still need to tell the system, listen, this here is my invoice number. You can find it on the top right-hand side of the piece of paper. And it was a very templatized process back then. And with that came a lot of coding that was required for systems to be able to read that information and make sense of it. Whereas we shift to AI now, and AI becomes more sort of generative in terms of it can actually understand the end-to-end document. You can actually take that information, it understands. It doesn't matter where that invoice number is on that piece of paper. It understands that's the invoice number. Your total due, the system understands that this is the amount we need to pay. So from a systems point of view and the tools that we're currently using, we tend to use the tools that are appropriate for business. And we understand that with IGS, we understand that each business is different. So no two businesses are the same. No two management teams are the same. So what we tend to do is we tend to create the right fit for that business at the time. So for example, a ChatGPT implementation or might be appropriate for a business that's high in a contract management or data analysis from looking at supplier queries, for example. So it would be the right fit for the right individual at the time. And I think that's what's important. understand your process, understand what your end result's going to be before you look at automating. Very often we find businesses walk in and say, I've got 1,000 invoices. Can you help me automate? Absolutely, we can. But you need to understand your system as a whole, understand the complexity within that system. And you can use simple tools. I mean, we use tools like VSM, which is it's a cybernetic a model. What it does is it helps you analyze specific processes within your business. It helps you understand complexity around those processes. And by using a VSM model, it basically helps you understand the entire system and your interdependencies within that system. So instead of automating a specific process, you understand your inputs and your outputs from that process, so you have a successful implementation at the end of the day. So it's about critical thinking, it's about systems thinking within your environment and within the end-to-end process. I hope that answers your question.
No, thanks, Nesh. It does. That's a really great insight, especially how you tie back automation to having that real business impact with, start where you are with the tools that give you that real business impact. I'm going to move over on to Shiven now. Shiv, the question I have for you is, how are you using AI tools? And we'll take the popular ones for now. How are you using AI tools like Copilot, God LLM, Power Apps, end-to-end for workflows within your own company? And how does that also influence the finance space that you're in?
Yeah, thanks, Izzy, and just everyone. I mean, when starting with AI, it might seem a bit daunting getting started, but if you have an iPhone, you likely use Siri, which was a foundational AI model in speech to text. In that was self-learning on information. So when using something like GPT right now, or Claude from Anthropic, GPT, OpenAI, Manus, even Google Gemini, these are foundational models that help you generate ideas, but help you generate different functions that you may need. So, for example, the people that are on this webcast today are from a variety of businesses, but whether you're coming from legal, finance, or a research background, you can narrow these models exactly like we did, in terms of by asking it to be a specific profession, to be a specific niche, in order to generate ideas, in order to then narrow your brainstorming process from there. So it's always important to remember that when you're playing in the finance space, that when using automation or using RPA, using AI, using agentic methodologies of AI, that there's a very different perspective when looking at finance processing to a data strategy. So, and it's crucial to understand that, like Nesh said, that a data strategy is quite critical in understanding what you want to do, because when implementing AI, it generally becomes very expensive due to the time it needs from multiple teams coming on board. But in simple workflows that you can start with today is starting off with I would say you won't. Well, when I started out, I started Novak. It was just myself, and the team sort of grown quite significantly. So in that space, it was, how do we spend maybe 1,200 rand, which were maybe two applications. It was N8N and it was GPT, and narrowing that to focus on certain projects. And that was one was research, for example. And how do we narrow research, and how do we narrow identification of capital markets in terms of what we wanted to show our clients? And that was streamlining that research quite aggressively for them. But it's important to understand that there's limitations to OpenAI, as well as if you do not change privacy settings on OpenAI, that information is stored within OpenAI and it's free to use, and that model keeps learning, unless you switch off privacy functions, which prevent them from actually capturing your information. So adding on to that, scaling businesses as well, Guard LLM. I work closely with Bhavesh in terms of looking at those LLM models to say, what is privacy and how can we protect our information from being open, from getting into an open source model, right? And these are things and these are fundamentals that you should look at. Is how do I build my first application? And I saw this video gone viral 2 days ago, and that was Replit. And this lady that was in the 60s built an application, and she was sharing her journey in terms of how did she create this application. And it just comes with starting, and you have these agents to learn as your business grows.
Thanks. Um, so would you say that I mean, if we look at a startup today versus a startup maybe 10, 20 years ago, you have a startup now that can 10x its productivity and efficiency using these AI tools and is able to perhaps scale and compete with the likes of, let's say, an Amazon way much quicker than Amazon trying to, let's say, perhaps maybe adopt these tools and create their own efficiencies.
Yeah, look, so from our venture arm, what we play in is particularly pre-seed rounds in that space. And what's interesting is when we're looking at founders and investments in whether it be we look at small check sizes, and what the important part there is, because this technology exists right now, and that 20 years ago, to accelerate a startup from where it was to where it is takes about a year. You need devs, you need to bring a co-founder, you go through all these processes of being a leader and navigating this leadership style. But right now we're seeing young founders that are non-technical, that are coming in and are scaling an application to about 10,000 users to 2,000 users within the year. And that's incredible, because it only cost them maybe $5,000 to actually scale this project. And they were working full time and they were able to run this. And you have these open source like Superbase, Firebase from Google that are allowing people to scale projects a lot more quicker. And these founders are just using tools like Claude Code, OpenAI, Codex to scale these projects. And if you come from a space of I'm willing to learn, I want to make a few mistakes and grow, you'd find yourself in the cycle of how is AI evolving? And AI is not evolving on a month-on-month basis. Every day something new is coming into the space, and people are moving really fast into adoption. So it's not saying read everything and be up to date. It's just about constantly playing with it in everyday business. And whether you're just talking to it for maybe finding a recipe to cook some dinner tonight, that's a start. Whether you're looking for a new restaurant, whether you're searching for a job, how do I apply for this job? It'll be able to search the internet for you. So those are fundamental points, and that's what we're seeing, that transition from 1 year for a product to go to its first customer to a matter of weeks, even overnight, with AI.
How would you say AI is transforming treasury functions and CFO decision making as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, so I mean, so let's break down the word treasury. So treasury is a broad function, but let's focus on treasury as its fundamentals, which is cash management, forex, AR and AP. So those are your advanced payments, and maybe compliance. Those are generally the fundamental things, and then maybe tax. You can throw in tax in there. So those are the fundamental processes of treasury. How a CFO is looking at that, and one of the key functions is how are you, when looking at these models, we've seen models starting to adapt of it's learning off SARS information. So some guys are feeding SARS documents into GPTs that are training GPTs in order to be a better tax advisor, for example. And again, this is now a tool that maybe a small business owner that does import export that says, okay, I have my accountant, but I also am, as a sole entrepreneur, I have to be my own CFO. And with those narrow training models that you're feeding information to, you're now saying, okay, I can understand where my tax advantage is or where my tax advantage does not lie. And by plugging in maybe an Excel sheet of my receivables, I'm seeing that, yes, I do have cash. No, I don't have cash. These are my weaker sectors. These are not. And you'll be able to, to put that into perspective. But in addition into that, in terms of treasurers using AI, we're seeing them go into a space of saying, yes, because treasury relies a lot on the macro factors that play into the business, we're seeing them use how are these situations like Trump's tariffs last week, Friday, how is this impacting the market? How is it going to impact the market 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? And ChatGPT synthesizes all that information, but also paints those scenarios for you in which you would have to have done tons of research on, and you would also have to maybe converse with an expert. Now you're able to actually create those ideas and scenarios that plug into your information models, which is also really interesting and helps you as you start playing with these models yourself to narrow them down to your business.
Thanks, Kev. I love how you frame AI as an enabler for, smarter and faster decisions within your organization. Bhavesh, I'm going to hand it over to you and bring you in here just around cybersecurity as well. And what you think the biggest cybersecurity risks are in AI adoption, especially with large language models.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Israel. I just want to dovetail back to Shiven's one, just to bring it in. I think the key thing that Shiven is saying to everybody, and what Nash has said as well, is that all businesses, large and small, have functional areas where you can use AI. The key thing is experiment, ask questions, explore with what it does, but do so responsibly. Because the one thing you don't do is you don't take your balance sheet and give it to ChatGPT's free version and say, give me my financial ratios. If you want to test that, what I've done, and I advise people, is that you don't have to go create a balance sheet and income statement. Listed companies' information is freely available, whether you're in South Africa, Singapore, or anywhere else, right? Go to who you bank with. I don't know anyone's bank who's privately owned, right? Most of them are listed. Standard Bank, EBSA, go get their financials, feed it into your LLM and ask it questions. If you have certain questions about things like that. If you have other generic questions, but be responsible on how you do it. We're saying AI Playbook, how to get started. We're not telling you AI run far away, guys. Please be very clear here. So it's just about saying, like if you had the cash takings, if you had a retail business, you wouldn't give it to a stranger and say, please go deposit this for me. You understand? That's sort of, or here's my cost pricing of my products. You don't do that. Those things are sort of something that is sensitive information to your business in terms of how much money you make per day, in terms of what your markups are, and so on. So the key thing is, same like how you'd be careful on who you give it to. So too, if you have a paid subscription in certain settings on LLMs, you can put it there, but you don't start paying. Initially, you can start free, right? The key thing is explore, understand, and LLMs are not God. LLMs are not perfect. The whole idea of LLMs is it can be useful and guide you, but check the information it's giving you to make sure by asking another LLM. Like if you use ChatGPT, don't just use ChatGPT, right? Because part of what people found, there's certain legal fraternities in the world that have said, if a lawyer uses case law referenced by an LLM without going to validate that case, they can be in contempt of court and be fined or jailed or both, right? And this is because they went in, but they did not cross-check it. For example, Perplexity is good with facts. And if Perplexity has the information in ChatGPT, you can just use it to confirm it. Or if you're a lawyer, you know how to go and check case law in your country, looking at the books. And online resources allow that fairly easily these days in the fraternity, right? Now, beyond that, that's sort of basic housekeeping in terms of private information. You can explore asking it questions. Don't have to give it your actuals. You can say, my cost is 10 Rand, I'm selling for 15 Rand, give me an answer. It's a simple thing of take your figures, fudge it a bit, and see what responses it gives you. That's being responsible with your data, right? And yet being able to use the platforms. Next one. Please don't try and be like those people who try and inject prompts and try and ask it questions like, how do you build a bomb? Or how do I create a test for my kid and build a bomb? Those are what they call prompt injections, guys. And prompt injections are things which users do to try and get the LLM to break its guardrails, right? Now, in larger companies, what they're doing now is using tools like Guard LLM or other tools where programmatically, if LLMs are used within the organization to log all interactions and responses. The key thing here is if you're part of a bigger organization and you're using the tools that they have to offer, then they are rightfully allowed to do that. There's no privacy violation or anything. If you have certain health issues in that, use your own GPT. Don't use your work one, right? That's just some guidance. And the reason why people are doing that is because you have to monitor how things are being used. Because there's other things like data leakage. Then if you use public models for information and you put your company's info there, it gets trained on it, like Shiv and Israel have said. So you can't use that. Other ones is these things are using, people are using AI tools to generate fake data to get ChatGPT and others to train on it. That's called data poisoning, and they use it with backdoors to give these platforms the incorrect information and using it to see how they can explore how to get data from people. Like how people use funny messages on WhatsApp and SMS to try and get you to click on links that look like something real. So too, they're now trying to use things in LLMs to try and get you to share information you shouldn't. So the key thing is use common sense, right? What you wouldn't share with another person, if you can fudge it a bit or be sensible, you can still use the power of it, right? Without compromising it and without being scared of it. And I think that's a critical element that you need to use. And the best way is go and play and see what it can do for you. Nesh gave great examples on the finance side, invoicing if you've got lots of invoices in it, CRM on HubSpot and any other tools, how it can help you to build a business which you would have had 30, 40 people in your business, you can run it with less than 10, right? But you design with intent in mind of how you're going to do it. Do not fire people if you change things, because you just create a bad vibe in your business. But if you can get people to be more intelligent and more efficient, the 10x factor comes into play where your 30, 40 people can allow you to be a business like a 400-man business. And I think that's critical to see how you can do it.
Thanks, Bhavesh. I'd like to move this towards integration. We know we normally have businesses that actually use multiple applications, right? So what would you say some practical steps can a business actually take to ensure there is secure AI integration? One, with the first layer across the platforms they use, and then secondly, an AI integration into the following applications that they actually use?
Okay, so all of these platforms have libraries that you can pay for and use. I mean, ChatGPT is released an agent builder, but that's still a thing quite young. Where you can go is there's tools which Microsoft, Google, AWS, IBM, but less so, but let's take these three. They have their own models plus other models that you can use, right? The nice thing is they give you integration capabilities using your Windows login, which is Windows Active Directory or Entra, as they now call it. Or you can integrate it with certain secure tokens in it, where when you talk one system to another, you're not going outside of your network. You create this AI engine within Azure or AWS, and it's your subscription. So all of it is locked down. You're not creating an RPA thing that's emulating someone going to the free ChatGPT site and doing stuff there. That is a big no-no. That is not integration, that's trouble, right? Whereas if you use any of these tools, and you also get on-premise sources, like you can have Llama models and stuff, or DeepSeek, where within your company or your data center where you're hosting your ERP and your other systems, you can integrate with the LLMs that make sense for you, right? If you're doing visual analytics, then there's YOLO, YOLO. Or if you're doing other ones like Kofax, all of these tools come with either free options or paid for options, which can be locked down and secure. So the key thing with integration is it secure? Is it talking without releasing stuff? Is it encrypted? And there's no human intervention for potential errors. And have you tested it and vetted it? Cool. Like you talked about APIs. So basically, this is the modern version of using APIs with LLMs and passing secure messages. By default, Google, AWS, and Azure's messaging across platforms is encrypted at rest and in transit, right? So it's just about how you connect to it. And as long as you're not getting ChatGPT to generate code for you, please, guys, you do not do integration just by saying, give me some Python or C or whatever code to talk to the API. You can generate the framework, but then you need to see, is there security and all of that things built in? And you can vet that even by generating something, but you need a programmer to help you. You cannot, that's not one of the places you take shortcuts. Otherwise, it can bite you. May not bite you now, it could bite you later. And that's where the code in the LLMs can be malicious, insecure, or have gaps that if somebody wants to try and find exploitation, they can, right? So the key thing is you can use the tools, test it out, but have them vetted with somebody who's got the right credentials and background, right? And you can do it. So integration these days is very easy. A lot of these platforms allow you to pass things in, get the response out, and carry on with life, right? So the API interfaces are very slick. And both you get the open source and cloud paid for ones in cloud and on-premise. So it's just how you set it up, right? But it can be applicable to businesses large and small. And then you have tools, which I think Shiv mentioned, like N8N, or you mentioned, and Copilot Studio, and those are pre-built by large organizations or startups that have built something that works really well, right? Even if you use Xero for finance, it has AI built in, and you know it's secure because Xero is your financial system. They've already invested a lot of time and money. So try and see what tools they have or people they partner with, because they won't endorse partners that are suspect.
Thanks, Bhavesh. And I'd like to bring all three of you in for this question. It's a two-part question. The first part just being around workflow automation and machine learning, and the second part around misconceptions. So the first part, within your industries, are you able to give us practical examples of certain workflow automations or machine learning models that are set? So anomaly detections in finance or classification models that deliver real business value. And I'll start with you, Nesh.
Certainly, thanks, Izzy. So one of the most vocal at the moment is in operational finance. It's around invoice processing. So we're looking at corporates that process in excess of 1,000 invoices per month. Historically, we used to have a team of 15, 20 individuals, managing every single document through OCR, etc., data extraction, processing. The shift to AI right now is we find that we are in a phase of exception managing only. So we've got a 90% of the documentation goes through because it's proven. We understand where it's come from. It goes through successfully, and then you have a small team that looks at simply just the exceptions. So that can improve your productivity by 80%, sometimes even more. One of the practical examples I'm dealing with at the moment, if you look at, as Bhavesh said, use of LLMs. So, and if you look at a closed network implementation, so for example, we have a corporate that's currently looking at compliance specifically. So what you could do is you could take the entire Companies Act, upload it into an LLM in a closed network and use that to manage your risks. So those are some of the practical examples we're busy with at the moment. Just to name of one other, in the procurement space, we've got obviously you need raw materials to run your business, so we have a procurement department that's busy with purchasing. Historically, you would find there's this tedious approvals process in place, where the guy receives these quotes. He needs to get 3 quotes. He needs to take that up to management. He needs to print them out, get it signed. At the end of the day, you end up with a lever arch file in a cupboard for maintenance equipment, for example. Whereas now you've automated that process. So it's, as I said, it's exceptionals handling. The manager gets an email to say, here, these are the quotes. You can click on a link, takes you to the physical documentation, but then you can review stuff that would normally take you an hour and can be reviewed in 2 minutes. So those are the benefits and the practical benefits that we're seeing right now. And just going back to LLMs, if it's not just the Companies Act, you could take your entire 401, your VAT rules from SARS, upload it in there in a closed network and use that as a reference point, and with machine learning, as you ask the questions, the system then gets an understanding of what your business is and how what data you expect back. But as Bhavesh said, you have to be cautious. You need to, ChatGPT has got a great imagination. So you've got to be very careful, review everything, understand what you're looking for. But in these cases that I've mentioned, like the Companies Act and the VAT Act, for example, these are purely used for reference only. Yes, you have your retainers with large legal firms out there, but what this does is it prompts the question that you could put forward to your retained businesses, not let them do the analysis, but prompt to say, look, this is where I am at the moment. This is what I'd like you to have a look at. This is what I believe my risks are. And, you could streamline that entire process and at the end of the day, save tons of money in that process.
And Shiv, I'm going to bring you in here. Are there any practical examples within your space as well on how automations are being used and how the machine learning models are also being used?
Yeah, so one of the fundamental models that we're looking at now is around DeFi treasury, so decentralized treasury functions that are across Europe that are using stable coins to transmit money cross-border. Because there's a wallet infrastructure, we're using AI to measure direct and indirect exposure to identify if suppliers are participating in illicit activity before selling us goods. And that's something that we're playing now within the space.
Thanks, Shiv. And Bhavesh, before I come to you, I'm just going to ask the audience if they have any questions to just please drop them in the chat. We will get to the questions right after this. Bhavesh, I do have sort of like a second layer around the workflow automation and machine learning within your space. Could you also just speak towards the misconceptions that you also hear about, AI adoption whilst workflow automations and machine learning is being implemented within organizations?
Okay, so people say machine learning is self-learning. So let's separate machine learning and data science, where you build out a model based on some examples that you gave, like CNN and others, right? Where there's tools there and it has certain functions, but if you want it to give you better responses, you try and give it sufficient data to train beforehand, right? And based on what you program it to give you a certain type of response, it'll give you it'll give you an answer based on one type of question. It's not like ChatGPT. It's not like I can give it any question and it'll give me an answer. A machine learning model is very specific to, you train it to recognize an invoice. You train it to auto approve a claim. You train it to check for, if you give it images of a car, to say what's a normal car for a particular model. And then you give it images of the car that was damaged in an accident or something. And that's how it does comparisons, right? And that's a machine learning model versus an LLM model. ML, LLM, two different things. Can work in together, but they are separate, and people mustn't confuse the two. And the other confusion is artificial intelligence. No, it's not for me, because I don't need to teach it anything. It's artificial. Or it'll take over my job. It has no emotion. It's built based on how it's programmed. Like ChatGPT was told to be more colder than 5 versus 4, because people used it as a counselor, right? But it's programmatic. It's not self-aware quite yet. We'll get there maybe one day. And it's not going to steal people's jobs. It's like saying the blacksmith was out of a job when they invented the car. Horses, stables, typewriters went out of date when they had a word processor. It's a natural evolution of tech and stuff. It's not taking away things, it's evolving. And it just evolves fast, because now you use, as much as things are changing fast, so too do some ways they stay the same. So people need to just be aware of that and look at things properly, not just get caught up in the hype. Like Y2K, the banks are going to end. If the 4-digit year didn't come up, banks will shut down. Like, in my time, I've seen so many people not finish the project, and Y2K was still fine. I was still young then. No bank closed down. So people need to just calm down.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Really valuable perspective there. I am going to open up the floor now for one or two questions. If anyone does have a question, please can you raise your hand or drop it into the chat for our panel to answer your questions.
Looks like
I think whilst
the audience.
whilst we wait for questions to come in, I'm just going to shoot this question to all three of you. If there's one practical tip you'd give a business starting its AI journey, what would it be? Just a quick closing tip, what would it be? Bhavesh, I'll start with you.
Simple one. Write down in English what your business does, how you would in a LinkedIn or some profile or in an advert. Take that and ask ChatGPT or Gemini, tell me more about how business like this can do better. Right?
Okay.
So it's very generic. You're publishing it out there on LinkedIn. There's nothing sensitive about it. If you have a LinkedIn profile, throw your LinkedIn profile at ChatGPT, see what it gives you, and sort of start to interact with it and see if you can get value. That's the simplest stuff.
Okay. Write it down on paper and give it to the AI and ask it how can this be done better?
Or differently, or what gaps you see, any of that.
Yeah. All right. Nesh, I'm going to throw that over onto you as well. A quick tip on how businesses can start with this AI journey.
Sure. I think, in my experience, I think businesses should start with value. Any implementation is an efficiencies project. You want to create efficiencies, you want to save money. That's the bottom line. And the way you do that is you start small. Start with value. Start, as Bhavesh said, understand your business, understand where you want to implement. Start small, see the benefit, and then scale.
Start small, see the value, and then scale.
Scale.
Shiv, I am going to throw that over onto you as well.
Yeah.
A quick tip to start this AI journey.
So, like Pavesh said, start simple, but move fast and break it. That is my logic when using AI. It's if a new technology comes out, I sort of go into GPT and say, okay, this is a new product, and this is my business. Let's build a simple like tool. And all I do is I just build that simple tool for myself because GPT walked me through it. And I get it. I tried out for a week. Did it add value to my daily? Yeah, it did. Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And that's about it. One of the why I say move fast from my experience in the evenings, I used to read anywhere between about 13 articles and then 2 journals to sort of being in the research capital market space. And now what I did was I sort of put that into basic language into GPT, threw that into N8N, and now N8N at midnight scans news feeds on Perplexity, and identifies what has been the biggest optimized headline, whether it be on Reuters, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, and then feeds that to my WhatsApp. And now I know that I don't have to go read 13 articles at the night. I just have something simple to read in the morning. And it's as simple as that. I don't think you have to complicate your life. It's just practicing.
Move quick, use it, break it, and repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nesh, Shivan, and Bhavesh. I don't think there are any questions in the chat, but a big thank you to everyone who joined us
There was
today.
one question.
Sorry, I know.
How to roll out AI usage as part of your data governance.
Yeah, she actually had to drop off because we
Okay.
have overtime. So
Okay, cool.
just encourage everyone to send an email, reply to the email invite that you got for this event, Keratin.Heatley@sham.sg. Any questions, or if you'd like to connect with our speakers, you let me know. But I'll let Izzy close off. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I hope this session gave you a clearer view of what AI can actually do in practice. from automating things to insights, as well as data security and business growth. And remember, AI doesn't replace people, it empowers them. So a big thank you to everyone once again. And thank you, Kerry, for kicking things off. It's been an absolute pleasure. So from my side, I'll just say stay curious, stay innovative, and yeah, we'll definitely see you next time.
Okay. Thank you, Israel. Thanks, everyone. And you will all be sent the recording after the event. So keep a lookout for that. But really appreciate the conversation today and everyone taking the time to join. I know everyone is busy. It's always like a LinkedIn learning session for me. So we've got our incredible speakers. I really appreciate your time. And thanks, Israel, again for moderating the second of many.
Second of many.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Much
Thanks,
appreciated.
Guys,
Thank you, everyone.
take care.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.